Hi, thank you for joining me in this episode of GradSWE UCLA presents Women in Science, We Have the Power to Change the World. My name is Yifan Gao, a PhD candidate from Civil and Environmental Engineering Department at UCLA. I'm also the International Student Event Officer at GradSWE UCLA. GradSWE stands for the Graduate Student Community of Society of Women Engineers. Our goal is to provide support to graduate students and help them shine in their future career. We are going to host a series of interviews to female scientists, and we hope we can encourage more women to join the community of STEM. Our guest today is Dr. Maggie Fox. She's currently an associate editor at Nature Communications. She got her PhD degree from UCLA Material Science and Engineering Department. If you're interested in her work or her research, feel free to contact her. Hi, Maggie. Thank you so much for joining us in our channel.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah. Oh, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah. So, hi everybody. My name is Maggie Fox. I recently finished my PhD at UCLA this past August, so just a few weeks ago, in material science and engineering. And while I was there, I was focusing on battery research, so really looking at non-planar and solid state batteries. But since then, I've actually started a job as an associate editor at Nature Communications on the energy materials team there, so focusing on electrochemical energy storage device submissions and working with people through the publication process.
Yeah, sounds really cool. You are my first guest actually working in a scientific journal, and it's like Nature Communication, like really, really top tier journal. So I really want to know, like, why did you choose to pursue as like an editor in journal like Nature Communication? I know many PhD students, they never thought they could be an editor at some time, because we publish paper, we work with editor for a really long time, but we never thought it's like a choice for us. So why did you make that decision?
Honestly, I didn't think it was a choice for me either. I didn't know that it was a career path that you could take right outside of grad school until about my fourth year. So to be transparent, I had been working in a lab for about almost 10 years. So from undergrad through grad school, and during the pandemic, I kind of realized that I wanted to step away from the bench. And that was a conversation that was hard to have with my advisor at the time. He was very supportive of it. But it was kind of a conversation where we were having that at some point, most people have to step away from the bench, or just about everybody steps away from the bench, regardless of what field that you're in, whether it be that you're pursuing management or something else. So it was kind of like choosing your terms to do that on. Just for a little context of, I was looking for jobs not in a research like specific space. And so I really thought I wanted to go into science policy or something just with science communication. I had done an internship at the RAND Corporation, which is a nonprofit think tank, actually based in Santa Monica, though they have a few other offices. And I really enjoyed my time there, and I was focusing on policy research. And so I thought that was where I wanted to do afterwards. But as I was talking to my advisor about it, and I was kind of talking to him about the aspects of the job, that I had enjoyed, and the aspects of grad school that I enjoyed, something that I had come to the conclusion of is that I like to look at like the research that's out there. I kind of like to not poke holes in it, but to kind of help things along and find inconsistencies, or like find like the really impactful aspects of things that you can really highlight. And that was really what I enjoyed the most out of both of the jobs, and the fact that it was something different to do every day, that I got to talk to a lot of people and kind of interact. So that was something I was looking for, which is a really tall order when you're going from a traditional lab research to not. And then there was actually an editor that came to visit UCLA's campus, that she was just talking to a few people that she had publications that she had requested from them, so a commissioned piece. And one of them happened to be with my advisor at the time, and he introduced the two of us, and we really hit it off. And she was at Jewel. She was working in the battery space, and she was kind of describing her job to me. I know, she was great. I learned a lot from her, getting to speak with her. But we were kind of talking about things, and she was telling me like, oh yeah, like I joined the editing space like right after grad school. And she was telling me, you know, like just a little bit about how she did it, like kind of what the process was like, but really the aspects of the job that she enjoyed. So some of that, you know, was going to conferences and meeting students and getting to talk to people about the research they were doing, and helping them along, whether that be like, hey, like think about submitting with me, like I think there's something interesting here, or like have you considered these things. And everything she was saying, I was like, wow, that's amazing. And I've never considered that job because I didn't think that was something you could do right after
that's true.
School.
I think most of the scientific journal, like the editors, they're professors, right?
Yeah. So you see that a lot, that professors are like guest editors, or they're editors in chief, whatever the case might be. And that is still really common, even like with, you'll have like freelance editors at Nature too. But there was something about the way that she was describing it, of just the fact that she was like, somebody needs to be here full time to make sure these things are actually running.
Especially those like really big journals.
So because of that, I was like, maybe that's a job. And I kind of like put it in the back burner. And I was like, we'll think about that when applications come around. I have so much time. And I forgot about it. And I totally forgot about it. And I was going through the job application process, and I was looking for things, and I was talking to my advisor again, and he was like, have you seen any jobs for editing positions? And I was like, actually, now that you've mentioned it, like, no, like I know it was like one of the things I had marked off. And he was like, well, something came across my desk that there is a job opening up at Nature Communications.
Wow, that's cool.
And they're looking for somebody almost immediately on the energy team. He was like, it's like they wrote it out for you. And I was like, okay. Definitely, and he was like, gotta tell you, he was like, your chances of getting it are probably low. He was like, a lot of the people, he was like, I was looking at the team, have postdoc positions, that they've done a whole bunch of different things. He's like, you're coming in right away. He was like, your degree is not finished. He was like, so, because this was, I would say like May, June time frame, and I wasn't finishing. I wasn't, my defense was scheduled for like the middle of July. So I was like, okay. And I applied because I was like, you know what? It was like a short application because they were like, we really just want to talk and everything. And I was so glad that I did. Everybody that I even met during the interview process, I hit it off with right away. And I felt like an affinity for the organization just because they were so excited about like research and like the things that were coming across the
like
desk.
Different aspect from what you have been done.
And it was just, totally different environment than graduate school. And clearly the interview went well. And I was able to, negotiate with them to start right after I finished school. So I would say that my thesis got submitted. I got like the email for it like the week before, and then maybe a week and a half afterwards, I started there. So they were like, how long have you been a doctor? And I was like, maybe like 7 days. I was like, it hasn't been long, like officially. I was like, it's still technically not official. And they were like, and there I was like, it's the summer, it doesn't get official until September 15th. And they were like, oh, okay. So I like started while things were still kind of getting
in the process.
But that was honestly, it was sheer luck and being in the right time, like right place at the right time. But it is a job opportunity that you can take after graduation. You don't need a postdoc to do it. So if like the editing, I guess, side of things, or even like the writing aspect of going through the publication process is of interest, like in your graduate studies, this is a job path for you.
Definitely, it's like totally different because I think as a graduate students, we're going to publish paper, we're going to submit to a journal, but we're basically thinking, oh, those editors, we're not communicating with like real person. It's like
so far removed.
But actually,
I gotta tell you, the whole team is like maybe like a few years out of postdocs. Like everybody is like relatively like they were in your position like not too long ago. Like they are very connected with a lot of the universities now. And that's like a really big thing for a lot of editors, is that they really want to be on the ground with everybody, because you get to be connected to the lab without actually doing the research yourself. So like getting to talk to like reviewers, getting to talk to like, you know, the authors and everything, that is we're not that far removed anymore. I feel like it's much more connected than it used to be.
So we don't need to be afraid, I guess. We
need
to be afraid of reviewers, not editors, I guess.
Editors, I was gonna say editors, I feel like have the best interest of the authors in mind. But honestly, like that's a big goal of a lot of ours, is to make connections with the general research public and everybody, just so that we can say, if I have a paper that fits in your domain and I know we've been talking about things, I can always go to you with questions or ask you to be a reviewer. And that's something that becomes possible because we made that connection now, as opposed to me looking through, you know, the ether of papers out there on the topic. So I would say we promise we're not scary. It's a great time. We love talking to people.
I know. I think always we mix editor with the reviewers, because reviewers gonna poke a hole to our research and gonna say really bad stuff sometimes. But editors are really supportive, I think, and it's definitely like a possible career path for grad students. Not really, like impossible, can like unreachable or so. I think it's especially for really good scientific journal. It's gonna be a really big team. Or like, what's the life for like an editor? I know you just started for a month, but
so the teams are actually not as crazy big as you would think that they would be. So Nature Communications is a big journal. Obviously, it covers a whole bunch of topics. It's not like a specialized journal like Nat Energy, or even like an MPJ, so like computational materials or communications chem or something. Which are all great journals, and the people that work there have all been really, really helpful in the time that I've been there. But honestly, the teams are rather small. It's a rather, for lack of better words, intimate environment, in that they are kept smaller. So typically speaking, if you're working for a larger journal like I am, there are these sub-teams. The sub-teams all have different focuses. So mine being energy materials, but there's another that's like inorganic materials or material synthesis. You know, there's a whole bunch of small
different
topics.
subgroups.
And I think there's maybe like 8 of us total. So we're very small. It's like a team manager, and there's an editor-in-chief. And then there's a whole bunch of us that are senior and associate editors. So as an associate editor in training, so I'm in what they call the probationary period, I get a whole bunch of manuscripts, which are called at most places pinks, or just like initial manuscript submissions. And at that point, I get to decide, reading through it, kind of comparing it to the literature, summarizing like what the main points or insights that I think the authors are trying to come across with, or telling me that they want to come across in their writing. I kind of take all of that all together, and I have to come to a preliminary decision on whether or not I think that this should continue to go on in the editing process. So finding reviewers, or I think that it might be better suited for a different journal. So I can always suggest it to something else in like the Springer Nature family, or a sister journal, as they call it in the Springer Nature family.
So in your training process, you're trying to read the manuscript and then make a preliminary decision. It's like doing literature reviews all the time.
every day. Honestly, grad school is so helpful for that.
Definitely.
It's like that is a huge part of like the day-to-day job. So I take my preliminary decision and I go to a more senior editor just to have a discussion with them. So I'm like, hey, here's like my summary, here are my thoughts, and this is what I want to do with the paper. And from there, either they agree with me or they disagree, and we have a conversation about it. And we go to the next step. So either I've gotten rid of the manuscript, or I send it out for review. And at this point in the game, since I've been here for about just over a month, I've started getting a lot of the reviewer comments back that for the initial manuscripts that I send out. So at this point, I'll be reading through the reviewer comments, kind of seeing what they have to say, like seeing if there are any things that I think are like so egregious that can't be worked on versus can be. And I make another decision of whether or not I think this paper can be revised and should stay within like the publication process, or if I have to let it go, or if I want to let it go to somebody else. So I can still transfer it to another or suggest it go to somewhere else that I'm like, hey, after these comments might not be the best fit for me, but somebody else has a really big interest in it. So they would publish it.
Yeah.
So you can have those conversations between editors, between members on the team. And so we kind of go through that whole revision process. It can be a one-time thing. It could be a multiple time thing. And then you kind of start going through the accepts. So there's, you know, like accepting it. Yeah. There's like editorial assistants. So like people that come in and help you check things. And then you kind of go through like line by line together and say like, hey, like maybe like make this figure like a little clearer, or like can you fix these things up,
like
or like
proofreading.
I noticed. And then there's also the scientific proofreading though, like, hey, like that's not the correct nomenclature, like can you change this to this, or like whenever you have units like these, they should appear like this. So we also do things like that. So I have a few papers that I'm doing that with right now. And so once that kind of happens and there's a checklist, the authors say, do it, they send it back, we check it again, and then it can go to publication. So I would write like a little editorial blurb to kind of introduce the article. So if you look at an article on, say, like Nature's website, how there's like the name and then there's like these 3 sentences, like I would write the 3 sentences of what this paper is about so people can find it. And then it gets published on the website. And if it's part of like there's, you know, collections and things like that. So when there's special calls for papers, that's a collection typically. And there will typically be a paper that acts as the cover for that
like the
journal.
cover.
So you
really
can always have you can always have like a special or something like that you're now being like, oh, like we have to make the cover for it, or like we're looking to do this for kind of highlighting this article. And obviously I haven't had any papers that I've been able to do
like
that with
post training, I guess.
So like I get to do everything that senior or more senior editors do in their day-to-day, just that they'll help me along if I have questions, or they'll provide checks along the way. So that aspect of the job doesn't change as an editor, even as you get more senior.
Just
but as you
training, like training associate.
So when you're done with training, like instead of me going to check with like a senior person, like I will just do that by myself. So I can make those decisions by myself. And still everybody, at least on my team, is very, they work really well as a team. So they're always talking to each other, or like asking questions, asking people to like check on certain things.
That's good.
And they're just super, super helpful in that regard. So can't complain.
I think all the authors will be like really happy if they know like their paper got handled step by step carefully. These UCLA graduates, PhDs, they should be okay. That's why like nature journals and like Jules and other journals, they are really have really good quality. I think that's definitely one of the reasons that they will handle carefully.
You can tell, like, as I've talked to like some of the more senior or like different editors and different teams, you can just really see the level of knowledge that people pick up over the years. Even like being here over the last few weeks, like I've read papers on topics that are not what I studied in grad school or ever before. So like I wasn't the most familiar with them, and they've like helped me so much in terms of like things to look for, or like how to like walk through things. So like I've found that my like breadth of knowledge has expanded so much that I know more now even than I did when I was in school, because
in
it's
the
like
grad,
really putting things into practice in a different, more tangible way. And I've really enjoyed that part of it.
You are basically, you are like the first person that actually read the hotspot. That you are basically on the hotspot because you know like what other people are trying to publish, are trying to study. So definitely your first hand news, I guess.
It's so interesting when you like see some of the stuff coming in, because you're like, this is so cool, and I just had a conversation with somebody about this, but I can't say anything to you. And like that's been like a really big thing that I'm like, wow, this is like such a cool paper, and like we'll message each other about them. That will be like this is a really cool paper that came in, like this might just be interesting to you, you want to check it out.
Still
and
graduate
like
student, like graduate
still
still like talking
you'll
about
never escape it. Never
that's
escape
good.
it.
I guess if like a PhD student, they don't hate, you know, reading papers, doing literature reviews, and talking about papers, doing like reading groups. I guess definitely the editor life is definitely for them.
I think I mean, even if I'll say like, even if you didn't think you were like the biggest reader of papers in grad school, I think it's also just like the ability or like want to kind of find certain things to even compare your own research to. So like if you're just like, oh, I like have this random question, just to be able to find that, even if you like didn't like to read a lot of papers, that is a huge skill here. Of just being like, this metric is like the metric that I want to like kind of compare things to, or like I'm unsure about this one thing, and being able to find it. Because I think a big thing is that you're not going to read papers that you're an expert in all the time.
Even
like,
as a reviewer, I guess.
Like I don't have, I was gonna say, like, I don't read a lot of papers on lithium ion batteries, which is what my entire PhD thesis was on. I get like things that are capacitors, you know, sodium, zinc, halogen, like all these things that I had never focused on before. And it's just like wanting to learn about them and wanting to kind of like see what is out there is really the important thing. So it's like still having that like thirst for knowledge, I guess, that you need for grad school, just in a different light. So
like
instead of like doing the experiment. Exactly.
I guess like love reading papers, communication with people, and then love like chasing knowledge, I guess. Like 3 categories. I guess
I think those are like the big 3 kind of thing, just because so much of the job is covered in those 3 kind of categories, that it is like you kind of need it to be able to get through these things. But the other thing that's nice about it though is that there's a lot of flexibility with what you do, so there's a lot of opportunity with it. So something that if you look at a lot of these journals, they have these like spotlights, or they'll have they'll be like, hey, here's like the future perspectives of whatever kind of topic, and the editors are the ones that typically suggest those of like what to do, or like who to highlight, or anything like that. So throughout my training period, something that I've been working with my team manager, because he knows that DEI initiatives have been so important to me throughout like grad school, and prior to that, and working on like outreach initiatives have been so important to me as well, that he's really trying to incorporate that into my training. So he was like, let's think about like features that you can suggest, and like how you would go about
special
that.
Topic. Wow.
So he already like showed me, like he was like, hey, like maybe sign up for like this training course on like how to write special features or show special features. So in a few weeks, like one of my days will be like in the office learning how to do these special features that you get to do. So I think that's something that's really nice there, because everybody is so interested in like what you want to know. They're very invested in you doing well in things. So because in my interview I talked about how much I was interested in these like initiatives and working with people like at universities and everything, he was like, well, we have to make it happen now that you're here, so like here's the resources to do that. And I think that's something that's really important too, that you wouldn't think of for like a journal or like an editor job.
Like,
yeah,
we thought it's like always in front of the laptop, never talk to people, just but it's like
and it's like
imagination.
Couldn't be, there's obviously that as part of it, but like it couldn't be farther from the truth. Not the sabotage part, just in front of the laptop and not talking to people for a little bit, because that's sometimes you just have to do that regardless.
You have to like write something, right? Like
focus. But generally, everybody is very collaborative, talks to everybody a lot. I'm always on the phone or on a Zoom call or a Slack huddle with people on my team, or people that used to be on my team that have moved to different editor positions, just to like learn something new. So it is a very collaborative process through and through.
I can see there's like it's a really good job, I think, for PhD, for grad students that has like really thorough PhD training. So definitely consider that. And I think because you mentioned outreach, I definitely need to mention that, because you are also the national leader with GradSWE, right?
My position. So it was the graduate like lead for the GradSWE now affinity group. So I just left, I guess, officially that role at the beginning of July, just because my tenure was over. But I was on that team for about 3 years or so. And in the leader and leader-elect position for the last 2. So it was definitely, outreach clearly has definitely been like a huge thing for me. SWE at UCLA, GradSWE, honestly kind of gave me that starting point to like jump off to the national organization. But I was going to say it's a very almost like a different kind of atmosphere, and kind of seeing things from that higher level is really interesting to see, like how a larger organization works, in terms of the fact that things aren't as easy as you always want them
small
to
group
be.
So do you think that helps for your job, like for your career?
Honestly, to be frank, I think that being involved in organizations that give back and have causes that you believe in are important, regardless of what field that you end up in afterwards. I think that SWE was really helpful for me in a lot of ways. For starters, I think this was actually something I was talking about with the person that moved into the leader role. For starters, I think that being in SWE and running these different DEI activities, so doing the conference that I had started at UCLA that kind of ran through some of the SWE funding as well, is that I learned how to be a leader, or what kind of leader I wanted to be, in terms of what was important to me and what wasn't as important as it like used to seem. So like what I really wanted to focus on in terms of like the initiative itself, but also the development of the people that were working with me. And I think that that's something that isn't always like the first thing that you think of with leadership. Typically, like leadership, I feel like a lot of people look at as getting something from point A to point B. So like getting things done and how that group is going to get there. But something that SWE really taught me was that the development of the people beneath you sometimes is more important than the journey from getting to point A to point B. Because sometimes when you have initiatives or when you do certain things, sometimes they're gone after you leave. And that's, it's hard to think about because you put so much work into it. But it's the way of life. Like the conference that I had done for 2 years at UCLA and didn't unfortunately get to do my last year just because of bandwidth. I didn't have enough time to give to it. Like it ended when I left. And that was an organization that I felt really proud of, or that I really believed in. And it really, it was hard for me when it finished, but then I looked at all of the people that I got to work with and kind of the things that, not that I would like to think that I just like instilled in them, but like kind of seeing how they progress as leaders.
They grow. Like,
and like that is a bigger impact to me, because I know that that's something that's lasting, and that they're now going to go and instill in others.
Wow.
So SWE really kind of gave me a lot of those kind of tools, or helped me come to that realization. Probably in my first, I'd say, year that I was there, I got really close with the person that was the collegiate director at the time, Natalie Hahn, who's no longer in that role, also just because her tenure ended. But she was really great in that. And like a lot of people are always like, oh, you can't like learn from people that are younger than you. But like she was a few years younger than I was, and I felt like she was just like so knowledgeable and the things that she had experienced. And something that really just kind of like stood out to me was that you don't necessarily see the impact that you have just on everybody, or that you don't get to see the impact of every little thing that you do, because it's impossible to do so when you're in a position, especially like the SWE position, that it was covering so many different bases. But something that you can see is like the effect of the team, or the effect of the people that are kind of beneath it. And seeing at least the people that worked beneath me, that a few of them had told me they didn't think that they were leaders when they started, or didn't think they had the capability of doing something like that. And the person that told me that is actually leading the group this year, that she like really gained a lot of confidence in how she approached things, that she learned how to delegate, that just to talk to people, which is like something that's really important. That I think really kind of I got to develop a lot during grad school through these various activities. That she's doing a great job now, and this is kind of what I considered a rebuilding year for the SWE affinity group, just because it went through so many changes becoming an affinity group. But she's doing a great job, and she really is doing things that she never thought that she could do before. And I think that that's extremely important, and something that really makes, I guess, like me feel good as a leader, is that like she now feels that she can do this and bring this like next group forward, and kind of like instill some of these like qualities or like lessons that she wants to impart on them. And I think that's something that's really worthwhile.
The impact you make on people is like really important, I guess. I guess that's one of the beautiful thing being a leader, is you can definitely like affect people, and then you can make impacts and make them to feel confident about themselves, whether to be a leader or so. I think it's really
and I think just the people that you meet and the network that you build up is something that is a privilege to have access to. So there's just a whole bunch of individuals that I would never have met if I hadn't gotten involved with the SWE organization, and gotten to just gotten involved at the higher level, not just at like the school collegiate level, which the collegiate level do not get me wrong, help a lot. I got involved. I met a lot of people on the UCLA campus that I feel like really gave me a lot of insight on how to approach things, or how to kind of I guess like go about accomplishing certain goals. So like somebody that comes to mind is Christine Wei Li in the dean's office. Great, honestly, like she's in charge of marketing. She helped me a lot in terms of execution of large scale events, and how to approach people, and do really kind of go about like a lot of like the background aspects that you don't necessarily think about. And that's like a real soft skill that you don't develop in graduate school or in kind of our field of work. And she was somebody that I met because I was doing a SWE event, and we ended up keeping in contact. But I think just at any level that you get involved with an organization of this kind, it's just the connections that you're able to make are really ones that are worthwhile, and ones that are worth keeping
Yes.
and staying connected
Stay connected.
with.
Yeah.
So yeah, that
Yes.
I think is something that's been like really big. And I mean, clearly, like we're still talking,
Yeah,
even though like I've
okay,
left.
I'm also
So
yes,
you're
yes.
doing things right.
Maggie is we are in the same organization, GradSWE.
Yeah. Exactly. I was
Yeah,
gonna say I might not be a graduate student anymore, but I
think
was
I
in your
think we
shoes.
met at a panel, right? Like a graduate
Yeah.
student for like new grad student
I think it was,
orientation panel. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then, oh, well, she will also work with GradSWE. I'm also in GradSWE, and you are the national leader at UCLA GradSWE. So
I mean, so I was part of UCLA GradSWE and like pretty active in it for I would say like my first 3 years. So when I actually joined, it was a very big transition period for GradSWE, in that there was only 2 people that were left from the prior year before. So everybody else had graduated. So when I started, there was actually a group of like maybe like 4 of us that all started at the same time.
Right now,
and we kind of took it upon ourselves to try to revamp it. But yeah, I stayed really involved with it while before I joined the national board, just because of aspect of time. And since then, we have had people that were part of UCLA GradSWE that have joined as a national board. So MP Delisle, who was somebody in my year, she joined the board as well. She's now in like a different part of the SWE organization, running a different affinity group. So I think that kind of the skills that you get at the collegiate level are a great starting point to kind of build up into that next step, if that's something that interests you. And if it's not, that's also totally okay. You do not need to be. I think something that's important is understanding when you should be a leader and when you don't need to be a leader.
Okay.
So like taking in a leadership position, and something for me, at least this year, was that I had gotten approached to think about applying for certain things or getting involved. And I was very transparent in the fact that I was like, I don't think I'm going to have the bandwidth or just like the time that this really deserves to kind of step into that leadership role. Like, it's not fair. And while it hurt me to not do it, because I've never not been involved in a leadership role in this organization for
but you have
5 years, I recognized it was time to take a step back and kind of enjoy have some different things going on. I have a few, just like a few things
like
that were going on in the
change.
background. Since like clearly we're still unpacking, as we haven't been here that long. But yeah, I think that that's something that's really important. And it is also something that I kind of picked up in grad school, is like, when is the time to say goodbye to something or kind of move on from something.
I'm gonna graduate soon, so
it's
I think because started this platform, I guess if I keep working, I guess it will be like individual YouTuber, won't work with GradSWE because I'm not grad student anymore. But I guess the videos the videos
I was gonna say, I think that's something to be said. It's exactly the thing I was saying yesterday. The videos are still there, and people can still use them as a resource. It's a version, it's your legacy of what this is, and you can choose whether or not to pass it along to somebody else if somebody wants to adopt it. But at the same time, like, that impact or that legacy is still there. So it's something
really fulfilling.
It's something to be proud of. You should be proud of, to have like a channel like this and to be doing things like this, because it takes a lot of courage to ask people to be on a video with you.
But like you said, it's definitely gave me a lot of great experience, like reaching out and also organizing all of the stuff, learning like how to edit a video, trying to improve myself about the editing skills and a lot of stuff. So I'm gonna move to the next part, is for the GradSWE. We talk about GradSWE for a very long time. So I'm, as a female scientist, so what challenges have you met in the way that, as a PhD student, or also finding your job, finding your career path, like all of this stuff?
Honestly, I think there's a few things, obviously. I think everybody can say that there's a few things. One of the biggest challenges, I think, for myself, as weird as this sounded, was getting out of my own way. So just kind of having that confidence. I had, even with all of the experiences that I've been able to get over the years, with even with like having like those doubts and like being reassured by people, like it's hard sometimes to reassure yourself when you're doing these things. So that was something that I really struggled with and still do struggle with, that I'm like, should I be in the position that I am in now? Like, did they make a mistake? Like, what have you? So like when you messaged me, was I super excited that you reached out to ask me to do this? Yes. Did I think I was worthy of being on this platform yet? Absolutely not. And so like that was something that I had to like really grapple with myself with, of should I, like, am I in a position to be able to do this? So really trying to get out of my own way when I was finishing up grad school, especially. So, you know, like submitting my thesis, like
there's like
actually defending, like there's a lot of emotions that go along with it. And I felt very conflicted, not only about finishing itself, just because it's such a big part of it was such a big part of my life, but did I feel like I was deserved to finish, that I was finally ready to finish, even though I showed everything, which is super weird to say.
But imposter syndrome.
To a T, like amplified. That was the big thing.
Confidence inside of us. I think, I still feel like, I need to spend more time learning so I can be good at my job.
The more people I talk to, and I know that it's like it doesn't go away, and I know that it doesn't go away. I've been like trying to like really, I guess, connect with people at Springer Nature in the time that I've been there. So something I did was join the Women's Network that was there as part of the organization, just to try to build confidence and like feel like I had more of a footing. And I went to this event that they put on that were called Lean In Circles, where you get to talk with an individual about a topic. And the head of legal came. So like House Counsel was like the speaker. And so she's on the board for Springer Nature. She's very accomplished. She's very young. You know, it's intimidating. And I was hearing her speak, and she was like, oh, I have imposter syndrome all the time. But she was like, something that I remind myself is that I approach things as an optimist. So I never look at things. She was like, well, sometimes I sit there and I'm like, wait, why am I here? She was like, I never approach something as if I can't do it. So she was like, I might get there and like find out like, hey, like it's not going to work out the way that like I thought it did. But she was like, I never approach something thinking that it's going to come out the negative. And she was like, and that's a strength that is like part of her like leadership, I guess. They were doing like her leadership breakdown, and like that was one of the big things that came out, and I thought that was so interesting, because that was something I so struggle with still. And it just like seems so, like such like a foreign concept to me, but that I think is like imposter syndrome, huge.
Exactly.
And I think the other thing is just the idea of being taken seriously in a lot of places. So like when I started grad school, I was fresh out of undergrad. So I will fully admit I looked very young. I was not, you know, the biggest, most imposing presence in a room. And I was joining these, you know, as most of us know, engineering, this male-dominated field.
Material engineering.
I had come from a department in my undergrad where I was doing materials chemistry, and there was only 8 of us. They were mostly men, but I had known them for so long that it didn't really seem like that kind of environment. And then I came here, and it was mostly men. There were very few women in my department, very few women in my cohort, especially. I think there was maybe 5 of us, maybe 6. Out of like the 25 PhD students that were starting that year. We were a really big cohort. And I struggled with the idea of being taken seriously. Just because it seemed like, a lot of the men around me were kind of looking down on me. And some of it was in my head, of course, but some of it wasn't. Like, there were, you know, the people that were trying to like look at my exam scores, like when I was taking classes, and they were like, how did you do better than I did? And I was like, because I knew the material, or like, I know what I'm talking about. Or, you know, like when, you know, training somebody or being asked something in the lab and giving an answer, and then like, you know, we've all seen that somebody speaks above you, or like somebody says the same answer again, and it's so frustrating because you're like, why don't
why
you
don't
take me seriously?
Yeah, why?
Yeah, like we're in the same position, like we have the same schooling, you know, like we had to do the same things to get here. Like our path might have looked different, but push comes to shove, we are at the same spot.
Yeah.
It's like, so why is when I say something, it doesn't hold as much weight as when this other person says something.
Also,
and that was that was just something I really struggled with.
I totally understand. Also, they have their own language, I guess. It's their own circle. So I guess that's one of the drawback. I guess in the engineering school, it's really hard to get into their circle sometimes.
Yeah, especially when you weren't coming from that that background. So like when they found out that I didn't have an engineering background, when you know they were like, oh, she didn't go to like a high-end private school. Like I went to a public state school. Like public education is something that like I'm very proud of. Like I did public school all the way through my PhD, you know? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but some people do. And like that's just a stigma of academia, I feel like sometimes. But yeah, that was something even within my own lab sometimes that I like struggled with, that it felt like I wasn't being taken seriously. And I was close with my lab members, you know, like we were all friends, but it's something that comes up. So I had actually talked to my advisor about it, because I was like, hey, I'm starting a new place. I was like, this is going to be a new experience. I was like, I want to be taken seriously. I was like, you know, I was like, we've spoken about it through school. I was like, I don't want this to be something that comes up. And the first thing that he said to me was, he was like, you're taken seriously. He was like, I think something, he was like, you have to, he was like, realize is that, he was like, you know, there's always going to be people, he was like, that look down on you, that maybe don't take you as seriously as they should. But something else is that, he was like, some of it is like your fear of that you don't know something, and like he was like, it's the imposter syndrome again. So he was like, you're gonna walk into those rooms, he was like, with your head held high, and he was like, and you're going to approach things he was like, as if you would approach anything else, like you know the answer and that you know what you're doing. He was like, because when it comes down to it, he was like, they wouldn't have hired you into a space if you didn't.
If you're not qualified.
And like that was something I really had to grapple with, because I was still being like, maybe I like, you know what I mean? Like you're still in school, like you're interviewing with all these people that have so much experience.
I get you. It's like the transition time is always really hard. You feel like, oh, it's like a new environment. You step out of your comfort zone. Is totally different from the grad school, but But I guess
two really, I think, like big things that have been super prevalent, especially in like these like, last few months, especially, has been the imposter syndrome and the fear of not being taken seriously.
I guess we all share the same feeling. Especially we are the minority of the whole engineer group. But I think that's why we are building up the women societies, like organization. We're trying to help also encourage more women to join the community of STEM. It's definitely one of the things that I want to do using this platform. Is you can see like people are sharing the same feelings, like the professors, you will see different side of them. It's it's really cheerful, I guess.
I was gonna say, like, that is, I think, one of the most like, as I said before, like one of the most important aspects of groups like this is the people that you're meeting, the things that are being sent out to the larger group at hand. And as you kind of said, like seeing a different side of the professors, I feel like it humanizes a lot of people that like you don't see them. Because I feel like, you know, sometimes you see people and they're maybe more senior than you or whatever, what have you. And it doesn't feel like they can be going through a lot of the same things that you're going through now. And it's when it comes down to it, they are.
They share their really funny stories. I think it's I guess if you check the past videos, there's like a lot of good stories. You know, they have past, they have their own lives. It's like really interesting.
I mean, and I think that's something that's like one of the best parts, and something that's like so much fun with it, because like because you said like the animals and everything. Somebody I was actually talking to at work today, who's like much higher up than I am, but I had to ask her, I got asked to ask her a question. They were like, can you go and talk to this person because you're going to need the answer anyway. And I was like, okay. So we were on a video call and her cats were like jumping up around her and everything. And she's like, I'm so sorry. She's like, I'm such a cat lady. She was like, I have so many cats, love them. Like all these things. And I was like, I never would have pinned it. And like, but it made her feel more human in the moment. And I felt more comfortable like talking to her and asking her these questions, having never met her before. So I do think that something like this and everything is, you know, it's super important. I unfortunately do not have any animals yet. We are working on it. But since me and my partner both just moved back to the state, we were like, maybe let's get settled first.
Sometimes alone, I guess.
Yeah, you know.
But once you got your cat, your dog, you cannot get you basically you're sharing your life
with my parents' dogs in a few weeks. So I was like, that'll be more than enough for a little bit.
Okay, so do you have female role models that, you know, in a way that you in the grad school or
I mean, I definitely do in two ways. One, in a very abstract sense of just, you know, people that you kind of see in terms of like the historical figures in the past that they take. So like Marie Curie has always been my favorite scientist. She was probably the reason that I got into science in the first place. If I'm being honest, like I like read a book about her when I was little and I was like, this is my favorite person ever. I was like, she's gold in this life. Like 2 Nobel Prizes, doing better than her husband. I was like, who could beat her? This is great. I was like, watch her. But like also in the very literal sense, like there were people that I met at UCLA that were definitely role models for me. So like some of the people that just kind of come to mind were some of like the younger professors that I also kind of just like saw from a distance. Some of them, so like one of them had just started in my department at the beginning of last year. Her name's Laura Kim. And she's just so impressive and just so confident. No, so that's Alyssa Park. She's very nice. I got to meet her in passing just because my advisor was the interim dean. So I got to meet her kind of in passing in that regard. Very nice, very accomplished. But Laura Kim is a second year now professor in the material science department. She does photonics, so we're not even in the same space. But honestly, like I saw her talk when she was interviewing and I saw how she handled herself and just like the confidence that she had in answering these questions and like taking control of the room, because I don't know if you've ever sat in on an interview for a professor before, but sometimes they get into like these like long like question matches that they're trying to poke holes in things. And she took it all like it was nothing, and she just like kept and like, you know, getting through everything. And I was so impressed just by like how calm and collected that she stayed during it. And I was like, maybe that was just the interview. And then she came to this campus and I got a chance to meet her and I was talking with her and everything. And she's just like that as a person. And she was super helpful and welcoming, but she was also like very eager to get involved and to talk with people and like stay in touch with what was happening with the students. So like there's the Materials Research Society that like the undergrads do. And she was at all those events. She was at research days when like graduate students and undergrads that did research were talking about like things that were happening in their lab. And she was presenting on things and she was, you know, answering students' questions. And just like that approach, I think, to academia that I see that a lot of these young professors that I've gotten to interact with at UCLA I find so refreshing and inspiring. Just
they're trying to educate the next generation.
And it's not in like, I feel like it's not in a very hands-off way. I feel like it's in a very like I was right there with you and I am right there with you kind of way. So it's very hands-on, but still letting people have kind of that independence. And I find that like so inspiring. So I like know that like that's somebody that I just met recently, but like honestly, like I feel like you kind of take different things from different people that you meet along the way. And she was just somebody that I guess like I met at the end of like my graduate school career, but I was just like, wow. I was like, you were so cool. I was like, I want to be like you when I grow up. And I told her that when I was leaving, I was like, wow, I was like, I would totally want to be like you when I grow up. And she's like, we're like the same age. And I was like, it doesn't matter. I was like, you're so cool. So I think that goes back to say like it doesn't matter, like it doesn't have to be somebody that's older
I
than
think you definitely made her day.
She was like, Maggie, what? And I was like, that's fine. I was like, I know we've only talked a few times, but I was like, I was like, everything that you do is really cool. And so it's like people like that. I mean, there are so many others that I can think of. Like, I think like one that comes to mind is like I had a high school chem teacher. She taught my AP chem class, who we're still in contact and everything. And I like to see like what she's up to. But she started our class the first day kind of saying like, I don't have a PhD, like people that you see teaching college courses. And she was like, and to be frank, she was like, I failed my first year of chemistry. She was like, but I'm qualified to teach you. And she was like, and here is why. And then she went through it. And I was like, to have the confidence to tell a group of 15-year-olds, because I think I was like 15 or 16 at the time. I was like, to have that confidence to tell a room of teenagers, like, I have failed, but here's why I'm still the right person to be teaching you this and why I'm in front of this room. I was just like, damn. I was like, I could never admit that. And like, I think like something so refreshing to me is like seeing people that are like willing to admit when they failed something, or that they, you know, maybe aren't like the prime expert, or that they have that. And like to me, that's,
I guess. It's like
those are people that I really look to as role models, because like they all have, I guess, like aspects of themselves that like I wish that I could emulate, or things that I like know that I need to work on. So like owning failure, I was like, that's so refreshing. And then, you know, I got my first chem test back in high school, and I remember seeing it and I failed, and she was like, you're right there with me. And I was like, that was the first thing I had ever failed in my entire life. And I was like, thank you. I was like, I don't know what to
material
what
chemistry, material science. It's like,
and then I went to college, and I emailed her, and I was like, hey, like I'm studying chemistry. And ironically enough, I was actually studying to be a chemistry teacher in undergrad. I didn't think I was going to get into grad school. I kind of had applied thinking that I wasn't going to get in. And I was just, you know, hoping for the best. So I was interviewing for a chemistry role, a teaching role in that school that I went to high school at. And she was there, and I got my first grad school acceptance. And afterwards, I had to like wait till obviously the interview was over, but afterwards I like went to find her, and I was like, hey, was like, so I know I just said that whole interview. I was like, I'm so glad that you liked it. She was like, oh yeah, it was great. I was like, I just got accepted to grad school though. And she was like, what? And I was like, I got accepted to a PhD program in materials engineering. And she was like, see, she was like, you failed your first test. She was like, you came to get help every day. And she was like, and you're going to go and get your PhD. And like, that's so inspiring, you know, for like somebody to like, I guess just like have such like faith in you. So I think that's
I guess
important.
You will be the story that she's gonna tell.
Honestly, I saw her, I think like this time, maybe like 2 years ago, like right when I was like figuring some stuff out. I didn't get to go back last year just because I was qualifying and finishing things up. But I'm actually gonna go and I think talk to the high school students again about grad school and like kind of what I do, because they invite people back every year. And so I was emailing her, and I did tell her that I passed. And she was like, who would have thought? She was like, I can call you a doctor now. And out of the two of us, she was like so proud. She was like, it's like being a parent, but she was like, but you're not my kid. And I was like, thank you, I think. And she was like, no, because she was like, there were so many of us that year that I think like struggled just so hard, because it's hard subject. It's not easy. And I think out of that class, I think there's 3 of us that all either got or are finishing up PhDs in chemistry or materials engineering. And she was like, she was like, this was my class. So proud of you guys. And
I think that's like the bad news. teacher wanted to hear, right? It's like
it is
chemistry. Yeah. What you taught is like what they end up with. Yeah. It's like really, So last question. I guess we probably has already finished that. It's what advice you want to give to women that are currently thinking about pursuing STEM majors?
Honestly, there's so many things that I could say, but I think it kind of boils down to like a few things. One is, I think if you're interested in it, just do it. And I know that sounds super basic and everything, but like when you think about everything I guess that we've spoken about for however long we've been speaking about these things, I think like one of the big things is like that fear of like not being able to kind of do something or accomplish something. And I think there's something to say about putting yourself out there, as hard as it is, and recognizing that it's a privilege to be able to put yourself out there to do things, because some people can't take that risk. And so like if you can, I think that you should do it. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that I think you kind of you have to think about what's important to you, and you should be true to yourself in terms of what you want to do. I think like kind of going into editing, something that we didn't talk about was the stigma of moving away from the traditional academic routes or the traditional industry routes. And I felt it. And I was nervous about it. And it made me kind of question, like, am I doing the right thing? Even though I knew it was the right thing for me, for what I wanted to, how I wanted to continue my STEM kind of career. And I think kind of taking a step back and realizing that I need to be true to myself and true to,
it's really important.
What I wanted to do and who I wanted to be. That was something that's really important. So I think if you're thinking about going into STEM, just kind of
be true to yourself.
Check in with yourself, gauge what it is that you want, and it's okay if it changes. Like I thought I wanted to be a professor when I joined grad school, because clearly I was studying to be a teacher. So like I thought I wanted to be a professor, and then I went through this whole kind of a change of just like understanding what I wanted and what I was looking for, and I had to be okay with that. So recognizing that if you change your mind, it's okay.
It's okay.
So it's like, if you have an interest in it, go for it. But if you decide it's not for you, that's also okay. And it doesn't make you any less of a woman or an individual in STEM just because maybe it's not directly what you're doing anymore. Or if you leave the immediate field. Exactly. Like you're still just as much of a person in STEM as anybody else is. It just looks a little bit different for you. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's super something cool. I think it's important. I think it's the right place that I needed to be in for myself and for what I wanted to do and what I realized was important to me.
Non-traditional is something that is innovative.
Exactly, you know, and you know, it might not be everybody's like cup of tea or what they want to do, and that's okay, because not everybody needs to do it, but it might be somebody else's, like you said, and now people at least know it's an option. And I think
that's really important. I know a lot of people, they share the similar skill set, but they don't know, probably just go for industry, and they never
just knew I couldn't be at the bench any longer. And I know that not every industry job looks like that, but it just wasn't for me. So I think those are like my two. I think like when you kind of think about everything that we've talked about today, I think those are like my two big things. It's just being true to yourself and being willing to take that risk and just kind of put yourself out there. And it's just something that's important to do regardless of what you decide to go into.
Thank you for your summary. I don't need to do this. Okay, keep in mind all this. Thank you so much for all of these amazing stories and sharing really important career options to the audience. I think that's really critical for all of the grad students, that they are basically entering the market and trying to think about what they actually want to do. Giving them more options is definitely really important for them. Thank you.
Thank you just so much for having me. I really enjoyed being here and getting to talk with you and everything, and check in, because I know it's been a while, but I'm more than happy to always talk with anybody about this. And I just appreciate you asking in the first place.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me for today's episode of Women in Science. We have the power to change the world. Please hit the subscribe button and follow us to hear more stories from female scientists.